All right, guys. So the Browns opener was definitely underwhelming, sad, disappointing, and just flat out depressing. But does that mean that it's time to panic? Is there real things to worry about, or was it just one game? I'm going to explain to you why I'm not panicking in this week's Untitled Post Game Show. Okay, so first thing is, I get it. The shock of losing this game as badly as the Browns did, as anticipated as this game was, probably left a terrible taste in a lot of Browns fans' mouths. Probably left a healthy serving of negativity in their bowels. Um, but I would say that it's important to keep losses in context. One, it's the first week of the season, and if you're gonna get boat race like this, probably good that it happens early. And two, let's really put this loss in context because a lot of things are being thrown around here just because the Browns lost pretty badly. Um, and I think people are starting to panic just because of the hype and all of that, just in the fan base. And I'm just going to try to explain to you my perspective of this loss and what I think it really says about the team. Now, the first thing that has to be mentioned when you talk about this team, because a lot of things were being said about this offensive line during the game, that is that Greg Robinson being ejected in the first, I think, quarter of this game made a huge difference in this game. He is your starting left tackle on an offensive line that we have already established wasn't deep. So it was already an uphill battle from there once Greg Robinson got ejected. But then his backup, Lamb, got hurt. And at that point, you really just had, whoever out there on the offensive line. So I find it really hard to give a legitimate evaluation of what this offensive line is when you had Chris Hubbard playing left tackle, some dude that nobody knew playing right tackle. It just was kind of an unfortunate situation there. And then also, let's talk about the penalties, 18 penalties. And I'm not going to sit here and blame it on the referees. I'm not going to sit here and say and try to exonerate Freddie Kitchens from his role in those 18 penalties. The Browns had 18 penalties. They probably should have played in preseason more. And they definitely need to have less penalties in order to win down the season. But I think also it's worth noting that I don't think this team is going to get 18 penalties a game. I don't think every game that the left tackle is going to kick somebody in the face and his backup is going to play. What happened this week against the Titans was abnormal and abnormally unlucky and unfortunate for the Browns. The ball just didn't bounce the Browns' way. Things just didn't go the Browns' way. It just wasn't the Browns' day today. While I understand people's immediate need to want to make sense of this and want to panic, I would say that teams lose by 30 every year and bounce back from it. I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns bounce back. I almost expect it. I don't think they're going to be that bad. I have too much faith in Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham and all of the pieces that they have assembled. It's not like this team didn't get blown out after Hugh Jackson got fired last year and were able to kind of cobble it together. So, again, I get it. It's the opener. There was a lot of anticipation, and the Browns just kind of laid a fat L out there that was very disappointing to watch. But, I would be careful on trying to project what happened in this game to the rest of the season because there's so much odd stuff happened in this game that I just don't feel like is repeatable for the rest of the season. Also, let's talk about Baker Mayfield. I thought Baker Mayfield for at least 2.5 quarters looked really good. Had a solid stat line out there. The offense was struggling a little bit, but again, he had no help with his offensive line. And I know people wanted to run the ball more, and I think that is a valid criticism because when you have two backups essentially with Chris Hubbard playing out of position in the backup and at right tackle, when you have two backups and but you have all of your starters in the interior line, would have made sense to run the ball inside just a little bit more than they did. So yeah, with Freddie Kitchens, I would say that is a valid criticism. He could have ran the ball more, could have called more run plays. I understand the urge to call pass plays when you have a guy like Odell Beckham, but you know, it probably would have been a better game plan, I guess. But yeah, Baker looked fine. He did have the injury, but the X-rays came back negative. Has a hand bruise. I don't know how that's going to affect him. Luckily, the Browns have a little bit of a long week because they play on Monday next week. So maybe he'll get that extra time to recover. But yeah, I'm not panicking about anything I saw from Baker. The 3 interceptions. I mean, hey, let's face it. We've seen this with Baker before last year against the Houston Texans last year specifically, where when the Browns were down a few touchdowns, Baker has a tendency to try to make things happen and try to do a little bit too much, which is kind of expected from a young quarterback. And, that's what he did today. So he has that to grow out of. But overall, I thought Baker had a decent day. He just kind of devolved back down. Overall, Baker, he looked good for a few quarters, but, that last quarter, he really, really started forcing things, really started pushing things, really started trying to do just a little bit too much. And I think that's also a reason why the Browns probably should have ran the ball just a tad bit more. Now, defensively, I think the defense is going to get a bad rap from this game because most of the points that were given up that reflect the score at the end of the game were given up because the Browns offense gave them terrible field position in the fourth quarter. I mean, that is when Baker threw those 3 interceptions. They were all like at the 30-yard line. So the Titans were gifted a lot of these touchdowns in a way that I can't really fully put the blame on the defense. But when the defense was out there and when the game was close, the defense was fine. Especially with the front 7. They didn't create as much havoc and pressure as I would have liked them to, but I would acknowledge that the Titans really had a great game plan to circumvent that. Now, that's not going to work every week for the Titans. They're going to have a long 4 weeks without their starting left tackle, but for week 1, worked pretty damn good. So, you just have to give your hats off to them. Now, the thing that does concern me about the defense is I'm not sure if I like this zone coverage scheme that the Browns are running in their secondary. I don't think that the personnel fits it. Denzel Ward did not look as comfortable as he did last year. Greedy Williams did not look as comfortable as he did when he was doing man drills in training camp. Even Demarius Randall didn't seem as fast to the ball as he normally is. So I am kind of concerned about if this secondary is a right fit for his own coverage scheme, and if Steve Wilks is going to change that if that's the case. Also you have to acknowledge that the Titans' new offensive coordinator thoroughly outcoached Steve Wilks today. And that is a concern because Steve Wilks is supposed to be an upgrade from Greg Williams, but I don't feel like the Browns were necessarily better off there from a defensive coaching standpoint. Now, obviously, it's one game. Steve Wilks can prove me wrong next week, but I do have a few questions and concerns about the coverage scheme that Steve Wilks is going to bring because I'm not necessarily sold that zone coverage is the right fit. Yeah, I mean, that was week 1. Week 1 was a deflating, miserable, depressing experience, but that's the great thing about the regular season is that it's week 1 and week 2 is on the horizon. The Browns play the Jets on Monday Night Football, and upside if they blow out the Jets on Monday Night Football or beat the Jets on Monday Night Football, it's going to erase a lot of what happened today because it's a national TV game. It's the only game that's on. But at the end of the day, it's one game. And I've been saying this pretty consistently all summer. I don't really expect the Browns to come out like gangbusters at the beginning of the season. I think that if you're a Browns fan, and I know this is not a sexy thing to hear, this is not a fun thing to hear, but the goal to get to the bye week is 3 or 4 wins. If this team has 3 or 4 wins at the bye week, I think that everything is going to be okay if they have 3 or 4 wins, because you have to remember, after week 11, the Browns play 5 of their 6 division games. That is going to be a huge, huge factor. They also play teams like Miami, who we saw absolutely get boat raced by the Baltimore Ravens. They play the Cardinals. They play a much lighter schedule in the second half of the season. And this Browns team, let's face it, has a lot of moving parts. I said this earlier in the year too. On offense, there's a lot of moving parts. It is going to be very hard to get everything on track. So it's going to take a little bit of time here. They're going to look sloppy for a little bit of time here. I don't think they're going to look great next week. I don't think they're going to look that much different on offense, except for that they hopefully have their starting left tackle and are able to get a more consistent stream of plays going without penalties. I don't think that this team is done. I don't think that this team should be buried because they lost week 1, though. I think we need to put this loss in perspective, put this loss in context, and then realize that it's not the end of the world. It's a loss against the Tennessee Titans. A Tennessee Titan team, which is a good team, man. Like, this wasn't a bad team that the Browns lost to. And honestly, it serves as a good reminder at what this team needs to fix. They still weren't great stopping the run. They still need to improve their as tacklers. And I feel like some of that was that these guys were used to tackling in the preseason. There was one play where Denzel Ward kind of just wrapped the guy up like it was training camp and then take him to the ground. Just things like that. This team needs to get out of training camp mode. And we see this with a handful of teams during this time of year, that there are some teams that just take a little bit of extra time to get out of there. Now, am I going to lambaste Freddie Kitchens for that? No, but it is a little bit concerning that this team wasn't ready. But there have been better coaches that didn't have their team ready week 1. So I'm not going to fully panic there after one game. Understanding that the second half of the season is way, way more important than the first half of the season, because the first half you play a lot of NFC games, which don't factor into tiebreakers. You play a lot of non-divisional games, quite frankly. So understanding that this is a perfect time in the schedule for the Browns to kind of get their stuff together and get their identity down as a team and clean up these mistakes. Because if this were happening against a division team and it was costing us in that way, I would be way, way more concerned. But since the Browns have a little bit of room for error, a little bit of room to get things together before they really hit the meat of their schedule in week 11, then, I think it's okay. Everything's going to be fine. I think they're going to have enough time to clean things up. And I think that eventually they're going to be able to be the team that we thought they were. So Browns fans, try not to get too down. Let's look forward to next week's game. Let's look forward to the whole season overall and not put too much into one singular game. Again, it's going to be a long season. This is what we asked for, and we knew it wasn't going to be easy as fans. So, let's not pretend that it should have been easy or that we were entitled to an opening day win. But that is it for this post-game show. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Browns game. What do you think they're going to do against the Jets next week? Are you predicting a W, or are you going to be doom and gloom? Let me know in the comment section down below. But that is it. Thank you guys for watching. If you really like what I do here, I talk about NFL, all kind of topics NFL related. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload, and I upload a lot. And if you want to help the show out, you can join the Patreon or you can buy a shirt. But thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.